So you want to get into government contracting. I'm Danny Oster with SC&H here to talk about unallowable costs and the impact on operations. If you've done any sort of research on government contracting, if you've seen indirect rates that we've touched on in a different question, if you've come across an accounting system survey that we've touched on in another question, you've probably seen or heard of the term unallowable costs. This is not to be confused with non-deductible expenses per the tax returns, although some of them are in common. We like to say if it's fun, it's probably unallowable. But they're an essential topic when it comes to understanding the structure and plan for indirect rates. And these are defined in the Federal Acquisition FAR Part 31.205. Determination of allowable versus unallowable costs is imperative in government contracting, especially for those that are on cost reimbursable contracts, because the federal government is reimbursing the contractors for direct costs plus the applicable portion of indirect costs. Unallowable costs are those that are excluded from the pool of allocable costs. Essentially, they are prohibited from being billed to the federal government, and that's because the federal government sees some of those costs as stuff that's not truly supporting the company's business, not truly supporting the labor, and not a result of the labor that's being performed on government contracts. For a smooth contracting process, it's important to have unallowable counts set up from the start. If the DCA finds any issues in the incurred cost submission were to go under audit, the process can be dragged out significantly and cost more time and money on the back end than anticipated. This is something that we tell all of our government contractors to plan for from the start. It's important to have somebody that's cognizant of the regulations and the rules in place with government contracts, because even setting up your chart of accounts to plan for and allow for the charging of unallowable costs is an essential business activity. And the reason we like to start this from the beginning is as you're planning and aiming towards potentially getting on a cost plus contract, part of the planning process is really understanding, what your rates look like. Are you competitive in the market? Are you competitive with the companies who would be bidding on a similar contract type? And if you've included unallowable costs in your cost pools, meaning that your rates are probably a little bit higher than you may have anticipated, that can be misleading and kind of lead to some failures. Because if those are your rates and then the DCA were to come in and audit that, as part of the incurred cost submission each year, they could be selected for audit. That could come back and ultimately be costs that you owe back to the government because you billed them improperly, which is why it's so important to understand all the rules and regulations behind the direct, indirect, and unallowable costs. One example I can give is that, there's always these questions around, are meals unallowable or is entertainment unallowable? And the answer a lot of times is, under certain circumstances with a lot of documentation surrounding it. That's an area that, we see it as risky. The federal government sees it as risky and is a place that's, important to understand and have people on your team that can help you plan for and document everything in a way that, if allowable, it can be supported if it were to go under audit, and if it's unallowable, to properly record that there in the first place. But if you have any questions setting up your accounting system, or you'd like to discuss further how unallowable costs can be tracked and recorded, feel free to reach out and we can set up some time to discuss how to best set up your company for success in the short and long term.